What we file tax returns, we pay our BAS, we do everything. What does it matter? What does it matter if I have 50 companies or if I have one? It's of no business to the ATO. You know what I mean? Like, as long as I'm declaring what I do and pay my way, which I do, like, we pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in taxes constantly. We collect GST as business owners. We collect GST for the government and give it to them, but we don't get a clip of the ticket. So why don't we get an earn out of that as business owners? That's money that I could put to the kids' football team down the road or something else, you know. Like,
hello again, Fair Business Australians. Rebecca Lloyd coming at you from Brisbane Northside. It's my great pleasure to have with me a man today that I've spoken with on quite a few occasions. He always gets me really, really fired up about issues that really, really matter to Australia, and particularly to not only business owners, but working class men, the men that built Australia, the men that construction relies upon, that families rely upon to put food on the table. So joining me today, Dave, thank you for being on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself for the people watching, tell them a little about who you are, what's your business, you know, try and explain as to what you do, and then we'll get into the more meaty subjects, of which is climate change, director ID, how do you bridge the gap between common law, know your rights, and the other people that just kind of can't come at common law, and all those different things. Over to you.
G'day, Beck. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Like you said, I've enjoyed a few chats that we've had in our time since we've started communicating. It's been good. But I guess sort of in a nutshell, to explain what we do and what I'm about. So we're a company based in Mackay. We do rental equipment, generator repairs, sales, air compressors, mainly servicing the mining industry, a little bit of the tourism sector, you know, farmers, stuff like that. Myself personally, I've spent probably, I would say, the last 16, maybe even more, it's probably getting closer to 20, I'm starting to show my age, years working in coal mining, predominantly underground. Wow. Various different roles. Started in that when I was like 18, I think. So I've travelled a fair bit around the world, just, you know, work and holidays and all that kind of stuff, and come from pretty sort of simple stock, you know, blue collar workers, stuff like that, you know, earn every little ounce you get along the way. Yeah, and really what sort of drew me to reaching out to you was just sort of, you know, what I could do to pay back. You know, I come from nothing and I've still got a long way to go to where I want to be, but, you know, it's what I can pass on to other people and what I can share my experience, you know, and you know, help other people. So that's sort of the motto that we founded the business on. Like, I started Kirbtech when I was 24, I think.
And it's a fully family-owned business, isn't it?
Yeah, it's myself, my wife, and one of my good friends run it, and then we've sort of built a crew of people now around us. You know, I would say, everyone asks me this all the time, but we're just growing at that rate of knots, and I can't keep up. But we're very close to 20 employees. We just started another guy last week, so yeah, we're probably pushing over that threshold. We service a lot of, you know, tier one mining companies that, you know, are at the pinnacle of our industry. So, you know, for such a little company to be in there servicing the big guys is pretty cool in my eyes, considering where I come from.
So you are, you're not a small fry business owner. You have many, many employees. You really are. You are putting a lot of food on a lot of tables through the men that work for you. How have you gone working in what is now quite a shameful industry, or when it comes to climate change and Green New Deal and all this green energy that's coming around? How are you even still making money? Why are you not being totally boycotted? And how can you wake up every day and go to work in such a terrible industry that is using coal and all that kind of stuff?
Mate, to be honest, the answer to that is it's a honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and I can get up every day and hold my head high and know that I do something to make a difference for the local community. And on a broader scale, you know, the region here, the coal quality is the best in the world, so that is highly sought after. It goes all around the world. Everything that has, you know, made of steel, that all has coal that comes from this region. So when you sit back and think of the scale and the magnitude that could grow out to be, it's pretty cool. And like you said, the publicity that it gets presently is pretty crazy when you look at it at a real world perspective. Like me personally, I think that solar energy is great, but it only works for not even half of the day. You know, and I'm not oblivious to how they make the solar panels. People, you know, our current leaders in the political world are big to push that, and they really don't grasp what goes into a solar panel or a wind turbine or any of that stuff.
Well,
And
why don't you enlighten us? Educate the people who are watching so that when they're having discourse of this nature, they actually can bring some facts to the table. How is a solar panel made?
Well, you got to look at the minerals that go into them. So you're going to have silica, you've got aluminium, which is every mineral that goes into anything green is mined from the earth. So this is what people don't grasp is they go, I've got my electric vehicle, I'm sweet, I'm saving the planet, but you're still plugged into a coal-fired power station when you charge your car overnight. Like, it's no better. And then the lithium that goes in that cobalt, if people really looked into where that comes from, yeah, it's terrible. I think the ratio to these typically green minerals, the strip to reward ratio is about, for every 10 parts, it's 2 parts recovery. So it's like 20%, whereas with coal, it's 80 to 85%, depending on the practices that you use. And typically being in that underground environment, there's less of a, you know, the traditional, you see the big hole in the ground as a mine. There's literally what we call a portal that you drive a machine down, and then you'll have your prep plant areas and stuff like that and infrastructure areas, but the footprint is tiny compared to what surface footprint is what you see in a traditional big bad coal mine sort of, you know, or any mining for that matter. But, you know, I've seen some stuff that Senator Jared Rennick's, you know, he's really taken the baton up quite hard with it, and he is bang on the money with some of the figures that he talks about. Like this whole 2030 decarbonisation agenda, people don't understand that, like, so the industrial age sort of started at the turn of the 19th century, you know, cars and steam trains and all that stuff. So we've been producing at massive rates for well over 100 years, and they think that they can turn it off and have it all convert the other way in 10, less than 10 now. Like, are you for real? And you think about it, back in those times, we had more traditionally manly men who wanted to work with their hands, and people left school earlier, so they worked more, you know, all this kind of stuff. Now, we've got signs out, ads looking for trade qualified people. It's hard to get. People don't want to work. They want to get the sit behind a desk job, you know. I left uni, you know, the younger generation, I've just been to uni and now I've got 24 months experience in the real world. I should be a manager. They've got that sort of approach, and it's that instantaneous life that we live in, not the, you know, start from the ground up and work your way up. So, yeah.
So why do you think
the world is a different place?
Oh, I 100% agree with you. It's not the same world that we grew up in, that's for certain.
Yeah.
Why do you think that people don't want to work? I was actually just on the way down the freeway today listening to a Jordan Peterson podcast, and he was saying in the podcast, they were talking about that in America, obviously, the percentage of men since the 1960s who are not only unemployed, but they're not actually looking for work. They don't want to work. Has grown by 500% since the 1960s. Men simply don't want to get out there and work in greater numbers. Why do you think that is? I have my own beliefs around that. I think it's a lack of fathering. I think it's a lack of mentoring. I think it's the emasculation, the de-emasculation, you know, castration of men by a very extreme feminist movement. What do you think, as a man, as a working man, as a successful businessman, as a husband, as a father who is looking at young men nowadays who will one day want to date your daughters, what do you think is the issue with men right now?
One day. I've got 3 daughters, and it's more than one day away. I tell them that they can have a boyfriend when they're 35. So I'm very protective because I was once that boy. So I know exactly their intentions, and it's never good for a teenage boy. But Look, to be honest, I'm actually a big fan of Jordan Peterson. My wife bought me a ticket. Her and I went and saw him in Sydney just a couple of weeks ago. It was really good. Like, next level. You don't understand how deep a brain can go until you sit in a room and listen to that guy talk. It was, really opened my eyes to the depth of some topics where they can go. But I guess to touch back on your question, I think that it's been, and it's not just a masculine femininity thing. It's an oppression of either or. You can't be one or the other. You've just got to be middle, and that's that's not right. And we talk about a society of everybody's got to be included and all that. As long as you fit in this little square, everybody's got to be included. If you're this or if you're that, you're extreme this, you're extreme that. No, that's not. Inclusion is everything, And I guess what you're saying about people not wanting to work is they can find other ways to mooch off other people, or they can just get along and just survive. Society has changed from, like I talked about in the turn of the 19th century. You had to go out and work. You had to get food. You had to keep your family warm. Punishment for not towing the line with the law was far greater then. There was more respect. People had integrity. They had manners. All those things aren't taught anymore. Like we were only just having a conversation the other day, my wife and I and some friends, and I was sort of put my hand up to say I've slacked off as a dad in this department, because I was really particular with my kids addressing adults as Mr. and Mrs., even if they were 20-year-old young fella that's working around the workshop or whatever. I would really push them to say, that's Mr. Smith or that's blah, blah, blah. And I'd slackened off as they got older because it was so rare. You don't see it anymore. There's no respect for stuff like that. So I think that the fundamental groundings of a good family society and a strong mum and a strong dad with their equal traits, and complementing traits. Mum doesn't have to be as burly and strong as dad, and dad doesn't necessarily have to be as soft and feminine as mum. That's what makes the household work. So, you've got to have that balance, and people don't have it, and they don't respect either side of the argument. And I think that's lost in society. So how do we fix it? Like you said, Jordan's got a lot of good philosophies about particular things, and there's one that sticks from an interview with Joe Rogan that he had, and I think it's an old Chinese proverb that Joe brought up, and it's basically it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And what the premise of that is for Jordan is everybody should be a monster, but you should know how to control it. And I openly say this to my daughters and to my wife: the man that you see at home is not the man that the rest of the world gets to see, because that's for you guys. I goof around and do whatever, but they've got this thing where they call me straight-faced dad because they don't know if I'm happy, sad, or whatever. I've just got that same appearance, and that's just something that as a kid and going through life, you just develop. And I was quite young in my endeavors into the business world, so you had to sort of hold your ground and be respectful, but understand where you fit and develop some particular skills, I guess. So that's just a trait that I've picked up along the way. And so they get to see all that side of it. But mate, I firmly believe people have got to have some fortitude and some backbone and understand what it takes.
What does that actually look like, to say people have got to have fortitude and backbone? Because you right now, you're in the prime of your life. You've got a great business. Because of the type of clients that you've got, you're not short on finances. And some people might look at you and say, well, that's all well for you, Dave. You're sitting pretty. How do you expect me to? Blah, 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 blah. So what does that actually look like, practically speaking? What could be a couple of things, or even one thing that a man that's watching you right now that's resonating with you, that, and I don't want to be go down a negative rabbit hole, but he's divorced. He doesn't even get to see his kids, or if he does, it's 50% custody. There is a huge onslaught, I believe, on the family unit today, and particularly on men as well. Everywhere you look, there's stuff to help women. And I'm not saying women aren't important, but I feel like the conversation around men has been that men are just intrinsically toxic, and you guys are the issue. And it's because you're not more like this that the world is the way it is. So how do you even start to come at that? Do you have any things to say around that?
I think, I've had a couple of conversations with some friends that pretty much are what you described to some degree of that. And I think the first priority is just keep showing up every day. Show up, get up, show up. Even if you feel like crap, just keep going. Like what you touched on there before, externally, you would see my life and maybe think that, but reality is I left home when I was 17, went, pursued a job, finished my apprenticeship, and then, I was always a kid that looked further ahead down the path, I guess, than most. It wasn't just about the weekends and being a rat bag. I did all that stuff, and that was fine, but always wanted more. And I knew the only way to get there was hard work. And that's it. There's absolutely no secret. And I have spent, hours upon hours studying successful people, and I have a lot of different people on many different planes of modern day success. Good friends of mine are athletes, high profile businessmen, and all different walks of life. And the one attribute that it carries across all of them is work. And resources are so present now that you can YouTube something and you can hear somebody talk, and anybody who is somebody that's gotten somewhere will say number one thing is work. So I guess my thing is get up, show up, keep showing up. Today might be crap, tomorrow might be a little bit better, but just keep showing up. And eventually, like you described, modern day society, even if it's just a competitive sort of outlook to it, eventually the competition will stop because they'll give up. Just don't give up. Just keep going.
Yeah. And I think also what you said there was really important as well, that either surround yourself physically with people who are of the same ilk, who want better for their life. And if you don't have anyone in your immediate circle quite yet, you can surround yourself with YouTubes, with podcasts, with books, with, seminars, so that you can be around those like-minded people, even if they're not in your personal or career circle quite yet. So everything that you're saying so far, I'm sure, is resonating with a lot of men. And a lot of women are thinking, oh, if only we had more people like Dave. What does the future look like for Kirbtech? Are you looking to expand? Are you looking to get even more employees under your belt? And also, having said that, I want to talk to you about what is very, very poignant right now, which is the director ID. What are your thoughts about that? Are you concerned about that? Is that something that is on your radar? What does the future look like for Kirbtech?
Well, for us, this is me personally, my vision for the business is to grow it into a legacy that I can change the life of my kids, their great grandkids, and the people that help me along the way. So it's, one of my best mates is the guy that runs our business for me. Like, he's the guy on the ground, Ben Fisher, champion bloke, the first guy that I sort of met when I moved to Mackay. Ben and I become friends, way back in 2006, I think it was 2007. And he is an absolute stud. He just, shows up every day just like me. We just keep going. Do we mess up? Yep. But we just keep showing up and keep going. And so I guess my vision is to be able to build this company into a beast that can take care of his family, his needs, and the other people within the business that have been around for a long time. And what that looks like, because of, as I was saying to you before we come on air here, the flexibility and variety of what we do. I don't have a 20-year plan to say, I'm going to do this and it'll look like that exactly, but I know which way I'm heading. And the landscape is changing all the time. There is some irons in the fire working on your more newer age technologies, alternate fuels and stuff like that. So early days with that stuff, but I guess my thing is to change as many lives as I can, and then that legacy kick on, So when I'm dead and buried, somebody else from this stream of people that we've been able to create can carry the torch on and you know, run that down the line for as long as they can and pass on those values to their people, I guess.
So good. Are you hiring right now? Because there's probably some people out there think, well, I've got a good work ethic, but I'm struggling to find work.
Mate, we are actually, so my daughter's birthday was the 8th, what was that, Thursday? And coincidentally, we received some fantastic news that we just picked up a 3-year contract at one of the mines up here. So we are actually going hell for leather at the moment, fitting out generators and fuel pods and all this stuff, trucks. So yeah, come January, we'll be doing a recruitment drive, looking for people for more so the right attitude. Skills can be taught, but if you've got the right attitude, you know, we'll work with it. We have a pretty diverse sort of crew of people here. You know, like there's a young lady that works for us that is friends with my wife and I, and she just rolled in one day. She was driving a truck, and prior to that, she's a qualified baker, and she just goes, "Hey, I didn't realise you guys are doing this. If ever you want a job, you need a TA or something, let me know. I'd love to have a crack." We had a young guy that was working for us, and he was sort of the other end of the spectrum, what you described, like, you know, flat out showing up. I'm pretty sure we must have given him 3 pairs of boots a week because he couldn't pick his feet off the ground. And I was just like, "Mate, this ain't working out. You got to go, fella." So he moved on, and I rang her, and I was just like, "Look, I got nothing to lose. If you want to have a crack, I'll teach you everything I can. You just got to have a crack." We just recently indentured her into an apprenticeship, probably 6 months ago. So she's really kicking goals, and you know, I'm pretty sure she loves it here. She's, you know, she's the backbone of our workshop. If ever something goes missing, we're like, "Hey, Bluey, where's this?" You know, there's grown men walking around wondering what's happening, and she's just in the background keeping us all moving. And you know, it's always a good laugh. We do enjoy a laugh. Life's too short to be serious every day.
Yeah, so good.
But the biggest thing for us is people buy into our values. If they don't buy into that, the front door, you know, we don't lock you in and we don't lock you out. Come in when you want and you leave when you want, but you just got to get what you need to do done, and don't jerk around too much.
So good. Wow. So you're got the diversity and inclusion happening alongside being a straight white male that owns something in coal mining.
Yeah, I know.
The lefties are not going to know what to do with you.
Exactly. Diversity. I would consider myself very, very open to the extreme views of the feminist society, but you know, I call a spade a shovel, and that's it. And if people don't like it, there's your shovel, there's the gate. You know, that's how I see it. Like I said, we give anyone a crack as long as they meet, you know, our values. And it's not, diversity is, you know, to me, it's not about a gender. It's about personality. I don't care if you're, you know, a leopard and you want to come in and do whatever, as long as you get along with us and you work hard and you know, we like a laugh. So cool, no worries.
That's awesome. I so love it. Talk to me briefly about the director ID, because I did promise that we would cover that.
Mate, it's still a bit like you. In all honesty, I did see some, you know, communications about it, but things are moving at that great rate of knots, and it was starting to roll out in the whole COVID saga and the sham that is. So it sort of went on the back burner, but now it's come full, I guess, front and center. And I don't see many positives out of it. Like, I did see a comment somebody passed, it might have even been on one of your social media pages, about how it's not necessarily a bad thing because it stops a dodgy or a director or whatever that's gone under, tanking that business, burning their customers and suppliers, and then moving next door and starting what they call a Phoenix company. I see that. That's a good attribute. However,
no one denies that.
Yeah. However, if you just brought in stricter rules about people doing that, you don't need to know what I ate for breakfast, where I am, how many businesses I've got, what that looks like, and that's stuck with you forever. So there's some method to it that potentially could be good, but the grand scheme of things, I'm very, very cautious of it, I would say. to the point, what we file tax returns, we pay our VAS, we do everything. What does it matter? What does it matter if I have 50 companies or if I have one? It's of no business to the ATO. Do you know what I mean? Like, as long as I'm declaring what I do and pay my way, which I do, like, we pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in taxes constantly. We collect GST as business owners. We collect GST for the government and give it to them, but we don't get a clip of the ticket. You know what I mean? We're a tax agent for them. Mark Boris said that at a seminar I went to. He goes, "How's that fair? You take that money, you account it. It costs you money. Your bookkeepers or accountants verify your numbers, and then they tell you you've got to cut the check to the ATO at the end of the month for X dollars. So why don't we get an earn out of that as business owners? That's money that I could put to the kids' football team down the road or something else. There's so many things with the whole structure of the ATO and ASIC that just make me scratch my head at times. And I saw a politician giving a speech about, I think he was a guy in Europe. He had an accent, but I just caught a snippet of it. It was very true. He said the current framework of democracy is backwards. He said we should know everything about our politicians, what they do, where they do it, and how they do it. And they should know nothing about us, or next to nothing about us, because they work for us. And I thought about it. I was driving in the car the other day, and I'm like, that's pretty right. Like, you think about all the times you've had a job, you have to give your resume to your employer and the owner of the company or the manager or whatever it is, and it says where you've been, what you've done. They don't give you a resume and say, hey, I've done this, or by the way, here's a crim check, or I might have done this, or I might have done that. You don't know anything, because they're your employer. But yet, as a society, a functioning society, we can't know that about our politicians or our government or what their underlying motives are.
Mind boggles, doesn't it?
When you put it in perspective like that, I was just like, wow, nail on the head right there, straight away. So,
I would love to know, because you're a very reasonable fellow, you employ a lot of people, you have turnover, all this other stuff, and yet you are faced with the director ID. And you did say that you have had some personal dealings with the common law mindset or belief system. Do you want to just really, really quickly talk to that? Because the issue that I have through Fair Business Australia is that because we are in such a broad bell curve in society, there are many people that simply don't find the common law, know your rights approach palatable. And so I'm scratching my head thinking, how can I bring awareness to all different sectors of society so that we can all move forward without favouring one or more approach and basically doing more of a scattergun approach instead of just lasering? What do you think about common law, know your rights, parallel economies, all that different stuff?
Yeah, that's a tough question to finish on, because it's not really a short answer, and it's another rabbit hole we could really go down, and it's definitely a topic I'd like to
well, let's do part two. We'll do part two, and we'll keep recording. I'll cut it here and then we can go into the other one. Well, welcome back. We are doing part two with Dave Kirbtech. I left him on such a cliffhanger and he's like, no, we can't do that. I can't give you a nutshell response to that. So I said, we'll do part two. So welcome back to part two. And we were just talking about there being a very, very broad bell curve of people that all think differently. We're all in various degrees of awokenness or awakeness, depending on where you sit on that spectrum. And we were talking about what Dave thinks about common law, know your rights, that kind of thing, as opposed to what might be seen as more traditional approaches when it comes to business. So Dave, welcome back and over to you.
Thanks, mate. Good to be right back here with you again. Like I was saying before, it's definitely a deep sort of a rabbit hole to go into. And I mean, at a high level, your question around the sort of scattergun approach, I think it's important that people see right from wrong, regardless of the vehicle that you're going to use to steer you away from wrong, that we go, okay, well, we all fundamentally agree that turning left here is wrong or right, or whatever decision. It's not a political statement, left first, right, but if we're at the crossroads and we've got to go this way, it's better to go that way. How we go that way, let's work that out later on down the track, but let's just head that way first. The common law thing, to be honest, I've only seen a little bit of day-to-day interaction with it. I've had a few people recently come, some stuff come across my desk about it, and I see there is some traditional, I guess, valued politicians, like Rod Cullerton and stuff like that. I don't know if he's all the way to common law, but he's very close that way, and I think it's really great what he's doing. I've followed a lot of his stuff, particularly with the COVID stuff, and I think Mark McGowan was giving him a fair flogging over there in the West, and he took the fight to him, and it wasn't really well publicised, but I believe he was one of the first people to physically get across the border without any consequences whatsoever. However, they have come after him again and again, and I believe, I don't know if you know of Rod, but if you do a bit of research, he's actually got a class action in the court in WA trying to rectify a lot of matters that he's taken about the fact that the country's gone away from the Constitution and all these type of things. And it's a deep rabbit hole to go back in history, and there's a lot of things that they talk about that happened before I was even born. So I've sort of been trying to run the business and do all my things and be dad and husband and keep an eye on that and understand what options may be available and how that would look. I do see short term, if that is to gain traction, if we were to peel off straight away and duck into, I guess, the slipstream of what is common law, is how does that look as a functioning business if you need to go and get credit or you need to do all those things? Because my understanding of it, and like I said, I'm no expert on it, I'm not giving anyone advice, but it's very, you start to veer that way quite quickly, and then you turn the tap off, and then you're under that common law approach. So how that goes longer term, I don't know. I'm very interested to see, because what I hear is there's a lot of positives about it. So I think it's definitely something good that we can keep an eye on. But either way, a lot of things I'm very hesitant to jump headfirst in, no matter what. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm pretty, my wife will say I'm pretty pig-headed with stuff like that. But, I don't buy the first model of a car that comes out because I let somebody else sort out the problems, and I take that approach to everything, and it's so far steered me okay. So, like I said, I hope that we can get to a point where people don't argue and bicker about the micro values, and they just see the macro values and go, right, let's go this way, because this is the way that the country needs, our community, probably more so our households, then our communities, then our state, then our country. To circle back onto the conversation we had around Jordan Peterson, it starts with things like making your bed and getting your bedroom in order, and then your house, and then scaling it out from there. So I think that is a potential, but how far can we go with it? I don't know. And I think people need to band together and see. You've got to test the waters for sure. But you've sort of got to keep one eye open in both directions on that matter, I think.
So coming back to what you said just a moment ago about, as Jordan Peterson says, make your bed, clean up your room, sort your own life out before you go trying to fix the world's problems. What does it look like to actually clean up the proverbial room at a local community level? As in, what are you dreaming about for Mackay? I know you're wanting to grow your own business, which will automatically affect a whole bunch of lives because you have employees, and you have quite a significant number of employees and people that you deal with in the workforce. But what does it look like for your local community when Kirbtech starts to get bigger and have more and more and more impact?
I guess if you were to say at the basic principle of the fundamentals, it would be instilling our values and integrity of how we do things and what we do in the people that work with us and for us. And then that goes on to their life and their family and whatever. But I guess as a community, a few of my friends have told me I should get into politics, but I don't think I'm PC enough for that. Who knows, maybe. But I think that it's important that we be a part of the community. And whilst I'm not a person that wants to get in front of the camera, so to speak, or be on that council type role, I'm happy to be the person that stands on the other side of the fence and calls them out when they're stepping out of line and going, hey, that ain't right. You know, you're not about that. We don't do that. You know, get back into line. We elected you to do this type of role. This is what you told us. We're going to hold you accountable. I'm not going to be a person that'll sit back and go, I voted for you to do X, Y, Z, and you've gone and done A, B, C, which is polar opposite to X, Y, Z. Oh, that's okay. Maybe you'll fix it next time. I'll vote for you again. I'll be the sort of guy that'll go, hey, let's have a meeting. You said you were going to do this. Why have you not done it? Accountability is everything to me. So I think if everybody is accountable at whatever level they're at, the world is a different place.
So good. So you would see greater accountability at a local community level for local council and governmental representatives would be a very strong solution moving forward.
I think it for everyone, but yeah, as a community, like the region here is, I wouldn't say it's under promoted, but it's undervalued for what it has and what it offers. You know, I grew up in the Blue Mountains, quite a cold, small country town. Everybody knows everybody. Come from a small immediate family, but a massive family in the region. So a lot of cousins and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it was still a very sleepy country town. And then I moved here and I did a lot of traveling with sport and stuff like that. And I got here and I'm like, wow, this is pretty untapped. Like there's a lot of stuff here that could really be, but people don't understand the potential and what they have at their doorstep, because there are some people that have just been born into this environment and just think that's just the way it is, or it's not that good because it's not Brisbane or Sydney or Melbourne or whatever else. So it would be good to be able to highlight those attributes within the region. And I think there are some people that do it, but there is a lot of career politicians like anywhere else that have been in council for a long time and only particular things happen. And, you know, so what does that look like in the future? Would it be good to have a bit of a clean out of some of those people? 100%. Yeah, I think back to the peak of the let's everybody get vaccinated, COVID's going to wipe out the world scenario. Our mayor actually went on TV and stood there with Anastasia Palaszczuk and said, we aren't going to say please anymore. We will come in and shut you down if you don't go and get vaccinated. That's the man that was elected by the local community. And he's telling people with not an ounce of medical expertise or understanding of whatever condition they have, that he will shut their business down if they don't take an experimental drug. And how did that work out? You know what I mean? Like, and again, that's another rabbit hole we can go down. But for somebody to stand there and tell me that I will get an experiment done or he will shut my business down, just lit me up inside like no tomorrow. And I'll remember that exact speech to the day I die. So next time we go into the polls, you know, get my vote. And I voted for the guy the first time. So, and anybody that has a good word to say to me about him, I straight away tell them that.
And what's their response when you tell them?
Oh, really? Like, Google it. You can find the soundbite. It'd be on somewhere. Like, as a politician, he couldn't even play that straight down the middle. He just went full dictator and told them that's what was going to happen. That doesn't happen on my watch. That's not democracy. You're in the wrong country for that. North Korea's over there, mate. So that's my view on it. But I guess to go back to the common law versus commercial law thing, the little bit that I know of it sounds very promising and desirable. But how we get back to it, I think it's the other end of the spectrum, right? So for the last, you know, probably since you and I were kids, society has, well, government has imposed restrictions and they just take an inch and then they stop they take a bit more, and then they stop, and a bit more, and a bit more, and we're in this nanny state now where 18 months ago people were running around with their phones showing somebody a clear sticker so they could come in and sit down and spend money with them. That just blew my mind, but they were okay with that because they got the green badge and they're safe, they're special. So I think we have to go back. If we're going to go the other way, it has to be steady because people don't like change and rapid change. I just said it before, I'm not a person that dives in head first. And a lot of people are like that. But I think the best way, if it was to go that way, would be a step by step, inch by inch, not just turn the lights out and we go this way now.
So what would you say to somebody who does get lit up inside on a regular basis when they see the atrocious things that our politicians say? Someone that really does want to make a difference, would you recommend that they go into business for themselves and start to grow, obviously through hard work and educating oneself? Would you say that business is definitely a good route for people that wanting to change their community?
I think so. My perspective is that it gives you the maybe the vehicle or the platform to create some change. However, it's not a overnight thing. Like, some people would look at me and go, potentially would say, oh wow, he's lucky, what an overnight success. I was 23. I think I turned 37 on Sunday, and literally working massive days. Like, I've gone to work and it's dark and I come out and it's dark the whole other day later.
Wow.
Obviously fatigue laws have come in now and you can't do that. I was a lot younger, it's a different time, but every day I work, and that's something that it takes. And the downside of that is that my wife and kids see me and they think, oh, Dad just loves to work. Not really, it's just what it takes. So I can create that vehicle so they don't have the problems that I had as a kid, or that they don't see the issues going on in the world, because I can potentially do something to shelter them from it, or maybe change it, or whatever. So in a nutshell, if you are that way motivated, I think business is a good vehicle to get you there. But as we've discussed as previously, that the government are coming for that as well. So I think everybody's got to band together and hold their ground. That's the biggest thing. If everyone says no, nothing happens, and you can do whatever you want. And that's what people don't understand. Like, again, we went down the path of mandates and people getting shut down. And I saw was it a cafe in Toowoomba where the guy got shut down? I think you had a bit involved with him.
Bar Wonder.
Yeah, Bar Wonder, that's them, those guys. Yeah. You saw it. He was just a guy just trying to run his business. He didn't want anyone to get involved with his stuff, and he was happy to stay there and make coffees and do whatever and just live his life. But people said, no, you have to live this way. Since when has that become fair in life? Like, we're in a world where people can force their views on us, but we can't have our own views, and they don't understand that the freedom of choice and action is the ultimate goal. And we're going away from that. I had a conversation with some neighbours of mine that are retirees, and I honestly think, although I wasn't alive in that period of time, I think when they were kids in the 60s is when the country and society was at its most efficient and peaked. Dad could go to work for 8 hours a day. You would have 2, 3, 4 kids, whatever, a house. Mum didn't have to work. There was still food on the table. Everybody got along. People were a bit more held a bit more accountable, had more respect for each other, and we didn't become this machine that just needed to work and exist and want. Yeah, we didn't have as many of the luxuries that we have in life now, granted, but it was more of a wholesome life, and it was a more, I don't know if efficient is the word, but it seemed like a better way of living. Like the gentleman I was talking to, Lindsay, he's an absolute stallion. He's one of the most, soul of the earth type people. And I was fortunate enough that he just moved next door to us. And he's like a granddad to my kids. He absolutely adores them. And we had a conversation, and he was talking about issues like, well, not really issues, just experiences where he got a pay rise when he finished his apprenticeship. And then all of a sudden, his 1 week's pay would pay his mortgage for a month.
Wow.
Who can do that now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The equilibrium is not there. It's not. You can't put a week's pay now and pay your mortgage out for the rest of the month and live one out and then live off the rest of the three for the month. It doesn't work like that. So what's happened? You know, we made things in Australia back then. People had skills. They had pride. We were renowned for things, you know, Holden, Ford, Toyota, they were here. Hills Hoist, you know. When was the last time you saw Hills Hoist in a yard?
That's very true. I want to push back slightly on you talking about luxuries. I think luxuries it depends on your perception. I mean, yeah, your kid might have, 12 different devices in their room and all the latest toys. I drank out of a hose growing up and hurt myself on the trampoline and pinched my fingers in the springs. I think I had a fantastic childhood and, wore hand-me-down clothes, and some of my toys were that never had a brand name toy. But I would rather my children be raised the way that I was than have the latest and greatest, but never see their family because they're off working 12, 14 hours a day. So it is, I think we've sacrificed time in order to have more stuff, where back then you had less stuff, but you had so much more time and so much more relationships within that time. Would you agree?
100%. One that you've articulated better than I was trying to do there. And that's a balancing act that I try really hard at. You don't want your kids to be socially inept or technologically disadvantaged because they don't know how to use those things. But my wife and I are very strict on stuff like that. Devices only on the weekends for a little bit. We just recently built a house, so we've got a couple of acres now and some cows and goats and all that kind of stuff. Anything I've got to do out there, come on girls, get in the buggy, we're going to do it. And they learn that stuff. They're not going to be the kids that think that meat comes from a supermarket and, brown cows make chocolate milk, and they know exactly what happens, how it happens. And my daughters are 7, 9 and 13, or 13 in February. So they're at a young, impressionable age, but they work, they get their pocket money, they do their little jobs around the house, and they're of a different ilk to most modern day kids because of those old school values. And that's what you said. We've traded instant gratification of devices and luxuries for time. And it's a balancing act because, as I said, it requires a lot of work and a lot of time and just showing up to do what I do. But you've got to be at a point where, one of my mentors said, too much of one thing is never good. And it's true. So, my wife is absolutely the beacon for that. She will say, too much work, right? I stop, we're doing this. And, she is absolutely the anchor and the sharpest tool in my toolbox to keep me grounded for where I need to be. And that's the beauty of how we work. She's not afraid to say, hey, stop that, pull your head in, let's go play with the kids, or you need to do this. And that's just how it works. So that's how we've made it work. I'm not saying it's the recipe for everyone, but yeah.
So good. Well, it sounds to me like, yes, we've got some challenges coming up, but I believe that we have strong-minded, strong-hearted people like yourself who recognize and appreciate traditional values, quote unquote. I think the country is on the up and up. We are in an upward spiral, even though a lot of people would not see it right yet. Do you feel that we are definitely going to win and that your business is going to move to legacy and that everything is going to be just fine?
I feel long term we will. It's a matter of how long it takes the sleeping giants that are the intellectual people that have all this untapped potential that don't really understand that have to do stuff. You know what I mean? They've never been made to having to do, it's what is it? Necessity is the mother of all inventions. So, the world as it stands at the moment is pretty different sort of place to what it's been in my 30 odd years. So I think that it may get a little worse before it gets better, but when those people awaken and stand up, we're off for a better country and a stronger community for our children, and if everybody stands together and does that. How long that takes, how long's a piece of string, but I feel it will. There's a tipping point for everyone, and like I talked about, it's the inch by inch and taking a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit. Eventually, the people that say if you and I snap back here, well, they'll get to this point and they'll go enough.
Yes.
But it's what they lose between now and then is the telling tale as to how long it'll take to go back the other way. But as a country, I see us very well placed. We typically are a resourceful country, and New Zealand's a very resourceful country as well. There's a lot of cool inventions come out of New Zealand, and they're very resourceful people. I guess it's due to the isolation of being an island. But we've got a lot of agriculture here in Australia, a lot of industry, a lot of minerals. We could have more industry. There's still that loggerhead with the whole green movement, whether you can't have industry and be green. Well, I would argue that you can, because what is really green? If you drill down to it, there's nothing. There's no such thing as renewable energy. You've got to get the minerals from somewhere else that can't be renewed. So you've defeated that purpose. We touched back on that last time. So it's got a finite life. What's the next stage of that? And I think as a country, we need to look to that path. But it's how long it takes to get us there. And I think that we collectively, as a majority of Australians, will head in the right direction. It's just like I said, how long it takes to get there. As for me personally, I don't have a plan B. This is it. So we just keep going until plan A works. That's the only plan I know, really. Sometimes you got to shift and you got to pivot and do different things. Like I said, I started in one section of the industry and I'm in another now, although they sort of go hand in glove. It's different, and who knows what another 10 years looks like. We might be in another sector or doing something else, but you just got to be adaptable,
So good. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you and listening to someone else's point of view, and someone who's in an incredibly different sector to me. Do you have any final words for those people who are watching as to what they could actually start to do whilst they are feeling buoyed up by what you've said today?
I don't know if it's words that, like I touched on before, just keep showing up is the biggest thing. But if I could probably share a little nugget that sort of opened my eyes, and if anyone is skeptical about what's happened in the past sort of 3-year window, I stumbled across a podcast by a gentleman called Andy Frisella. He's an American guy. It's called Real AF. I recommend everyone goes back and listens to episode, I think it was 129, and it was Freedom's, I'm trying to think of what it was. Pro Freedom, it was called. And he goes through and he gives his opinion on things that he thought at the time, this would have been 2020, I think, would happen. And everything he's depicted has happened.
Wow.
This guy's a multi-millionaire businessman, just a soul of the earth type guy, come from nothing. But he's big on accountability. He has a saying that personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion. And I believe that's true, and it goes back again, like we talked about previously, where there's little nuggets that all these successful people say, and it all revolves around some sort of hard work. Well, that there is the same as like your Jordan Peterson saying, clean your room. And then there's that lieutenant that was in the army that gives a speech. It's famous on YouTube about make your bed. So you come home every night, your bed's made. No matter how crappy your day was, you still get into a made bed. And it's all those little things that start to get momentum, and then over time your life changes. So I guess that would be my takeaway from all of this, would be that if anybody is wondering about what to do, go back and listen to that. And then Andy's got a lot of good stuff, and he interviews a lot of good people that have good morals and high standards and very different walks of life. He's definitely the big brash American type persona, but everything he says is true and accurate. And he's not one way or the other. He's just, a spade is a shovel, just like me. And I guess that's why it resonates with me.
So good. Well, thank you so much for your time, Dave. And for those of you who
no worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, in that field. Dave is going to be doing a recruitment drive around January, February. So do reach out to Kirbtech, take a look at that, and support Dave if he ever does go for politics, which he may, who knows. Support him. And thank you once again, Dave. And goodbye, and speak with you all soon. God bless.
All right, thanks, Beck.
Would you like to be featured on our podcast? We'd love to hear how your business products and services can help rebuild local small businesses and local communities. Jump online today at fairbusinessaustralia.com.au.